What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Z-Man Show, as today we are tackling Greyhound 2020, a pretty amazing war flick, at least for those, I think, are any of a World War II enthusiasts, or maybe just a war enthusiast in general, especially around naval combat. Mainstream and starring Tom Hanks, and he even wrote the screenplay.
Well, I think you were saying his third screenplay. I know he also did That Thing You Do, one of my mother's favorite movies. Yeah, I think one of the things we'll probably get into about this movie is like it's action packed the entire, like, once he gets on the ship, it's just there's stuff constantly going on, and it just really, I'm not a naval expert, but it really feels like an accurate depiction of 1940s
I would
naval
tell you, you would
combat.
probably have to be a person who's been on a warship of any of the sorts to probably pick out the inconsistencies in this movie. It is just seems so spot on. Again, to the layman or just kind of watching in. I mean, it just all the call outs and as they're taking a look around, the setting is just amazing. I mean, it makes them look like they are in the mid-Atlantic. They call it the Black Pit, and there's 37 troop vessels, troop and cargo vessels, basically heading over. I guess they were coming from America over to Liverpool, England. And there's only 4 light warships that are protecting it. And one is Greyhound, which is being led by Tom Hanks. He's the captain. And then there's Dickie, Harry, and Eagle, I believe, are the other 3, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, but yeah, they're on their way over, and they know it's a possibility that they may encounter problems along the way. And they even show in the beginning they could only be under, I guess, the help of the aircraft, like U.S. aircraft that could drop depth charges, or I don't even know if they did torpedoes too, but more than likely, I think they did depth charges. And they can only last for so long, and then I guess they're at their fuel range, so then they'd have to go back. And then there was this, like, I don't know, 2 to 2.5 day journey that they have to make it across the Atlantic, and anything can happen.
Yeah, so the area that they're going through is was referred to as the Black Pit, or the Mid-Atlantic Gap, where, like you said, they can't get air cover. It's just too far away. I think they're probably expecting an attack at some
Yeah.
point. U-boats show up on their radar, then it dives, and then we just jump right into
It
the
does.
action.
So when you start the movie off, it may kind of fool you a little bit because there's a small, short love scene, if you will, where Tom Hanks is leaving a woman he's been dating for a long time, Elizabeth Shue. But anyways, but I'm telling you, after that, within, like, I'd say 5-7 minutes after that scene, you're like pretty much in it. They get their first contact, and it's amazing. And the urgency when it's going on, I mean, seconds could mean hundreds of lives, for their ship
Right.
or other cargo ships. There's only 4 for a whole column of 37 ships. That is insane, and it's almost so insane, which I know obviously there were a lot of resources that were being bled to all different areas of the war during World War II, but the fact that only 4 ships could cover these, Adam, it's just mind-blowing to me. I mean, how do you do that? And you could see the pressure on Tom Hanks' character. He does a phenomenal job doing the acting, and he definitely steals the show. It's him, front and foremost. But he has some great supporting characters throughout it. I mean, even a mess deck, George Cleveland, who's a man who lost his life, African American who lost his life, and the gentleman that plays him does a wonderful job. Because he's trying to take care of the captain on this voyage, and I love that. Because even though he was just a mess deck, I say just a mess deck. It's not just a mess deck, but he served food, right? And he took care of the captain's needs or whatever. But he brought him his coffee. I mean, these are things that keep the captain going during this journey, which Tom Hanks a lot of times would not stop. And I kind of felt bad for Cleveland a lot of times, because even though he was trying hard for him, Tom Hanks, he knew what he had to do as captain, and he just wasn't willing to quit. He was all go, right?
Yeah, and I think, to your point, like you're saying, this side character was, and maybe your overall point is that, whatever you're doing in the military, if you're doing your job well and it's serving a purpose so someone else can do that job, it's a very important task. So and I think that that's one of the things that I did actually like about this movie a whole lot, is that I was talking to you earlier, it felt like an orchestra, right? It felt like Tom Hanks was definitely front and center, and I know he wrote the screenplay, but excellent choice of an actor for somebody who needs to be front and center in a movie, because he's a fantastic actor. He's done a lot of different roles over the years, and it seemed like almost all of the other characters, even Elizabeth Shue as the love interest, because her screen time was
Yes.
minimal, they didn't have to do that much, but what they did well.
Yeah.
And so it felt like going to an orchestra where it wasn't where you're hearing a well-produced piece of music, and maybe not any one person is solely responsible for it, but when you combine all the different parts, it
It
works.
really did, and the tension was so thick, and I loved that. I don't know what exactly they used for when the U-boat showed up, but it almost sounded like a whale kind of, or maybe even a shark kind of diving in or whatever. Like it was just this high kind of pitched, and it kind of comes in with an echoey, and then it would like kind of fade out. And it was usually either when the subs were coming up or going back down. And I'm telling you, every time I heard that noise, it was almost like a trigger, and
Yeah.
it's like my tension just reignited back up, especially in the nighttime scenes when they could not see these U-boats other than their sonar, and even then, when they're underwater, you can't see them. They have to kind of listen for their the engine noises and so forth. And as they were blowing these ships up, well, those blown up ships are it's making so much noise in the area they can't even debate. They can't find where the U-boats are, and the close calls. How about the one where in the middle of maneuvering, who knows who was the one who dropped the ball, but they almost rammed right into one of the supply ships.
You can see the ship tilting in the water when they're trying to turn to avoid
Yeah.
it. And one of the things that I really appreciate about Kraus, the character that Tom Hanks
Hmm.
plays, is how committed to the task he is. Like he's not sitting there yelling like, "Hey, who did this? Who screwed
Yeah.
this up?" He's just down to business. He's like, we're going we're going to hit a
Yeah.
ship. We need to not do it. We need to do this. We need to do it now. And he just gets after it. And I really appreciated that about his
And with
character.
that, and I'm going to tag right onto it. Perfect point. It was interesting because it was his first crossing over across the Atlantic, and you noticed a lot of his men kind of, let's not say questioning him per se, but they had their moments of doubt. I think when they sunk their first U-boat, no doubt that was a solid victory. Even though people right below him basically said, the first kill, something to be super proud of, and he goes, yes, 50 souls lost, because of this
Yeah.
tragedy.
As time goes on, like it things continue to get worse. Ships actually start to sink. Several torpedoes go
Hmm.
actually are on target for the Greyhound, and they have to maneuver to avoid them. I'll let you go into that a little bit more detail. You have a better eye for these kind of things
Well,
than me,
and
so
and
take it away.
we won't spoil the awesome scenes, but let's just say a few of the times. I mean, we had a pack of subs. I think there was up to six, or it could have been, I think seven. There was seven total, but they killed the one in the beginning, and then there was six. And dude, Adam, I mean, how kind of exciting was it when they started saying, we have a bearing at 19, and all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden Dickie's coming in over, and he goes, sir, we have this is another boat saying we have two more account, and they just kept coming in. They didn't stop,
Yeah.
and you're just kind of like, one U-boat is menacing enough, and troublesome enough. You have six of these things on you now, and like you said, the tension just kept rising, especially the nighttime scenes, and it didn't even matter if it was nighttime. Even during the daytime, these things were still menacing.
The things that are done well in this movie are done really well. I completely agree with you on that. And if you are a World War II enthusiast, naval enthusiast, and you have naval background and you understand how battles used to work at this time, it's not going to bother you. Two things that I think made it harder to watch a first time. So first off, they are they are the depiction of naval combat in the 1940s, in my opinion, is done so well that when the combat first starts up, you're playing catch up on what's actually going on because you're not familiar with the tactic. And I think halfway through the movie, I didn't take long. Maybe by about a good 15 minutes into the combat, you're more or less, but at the same time it's happening while U-boats are having this surprise element.
Right.
So I think there's I think there's a chance that it took me a while to really understand what was actually going on in the battle beyond U-boats are attacking the
Gotcha.
subs. And the second thing I want to bring up is, and this was actually an article on a website called BGR written by somebody who was in the Navy.
Uh-huh.
The questions you might ask are, like how big, like where are the destroyers? Well, how big is the Allied fleet? Where are the destroyers relative to the fleet? Where are the U-boats? How do all of them move during battle? And like on the one hand, I think it's the fact that these questions aren't answered adds to
Hmm.
tension. and really drives home the success because it's all this
Yeah.
unknown. But on the other hand, it just seemed like there were so many things that were unknown to me that I was a little lost during the first half of the movie, if I'm being pretty honest with you. Like, I knew it was going on, but I'm like, okay, where are these U-boats? How many ships have sunk?
Yeah.
Like it was hard for me to keep track of
And
it
I
all.
am a bit. I wouldn't call myself a World War II buff. I'm not, but I really enjoy World War II history in general, and all in kinds of encounters, whether it be naval or on the ground, and all throughout. Europe. And so I guess it kind of was a little easier for me, which makes sense. Like I said, I'm used to watching these movies. So to someone who's not maybe seen some of these, you might be kind of on the fence, kind of like, am I into this? But I think you're right, though. I think they did some good jobs. Like, when those U-boats were reappearing, it kind of snaps you out of this in case you're kind of getting
Right.
encased in all this tactical lingo, and you're just kind of like, I'm not exactly sure what's happening, and it just kind of puts you right back in. Once you see the U-boat, you're like, okay, I get it. U-boat there, and they're on it. So maybe to someone who's not as engaged, but even I mentioned Stephanie, my wife, she got really into it. She said she really enjoyed the
Right.
movie. We watched it during our family, and I had my brother-in-law, sister, and everybody was just pretty quiet throughout the movie. I mean, we made a few comments earlier on in the movie, good comments, mind you, but after that, I mean, I kind of looked around, and everybody was just kind of eyes, peeled to that. To the television, just kind of seeing this all unfold. So you're right, though. I mean, to someone who's not used to all that tactical information, it can be a bit overwhelming, and hopefully, it won't lose you. But I think overall, I think you can appreciate you and the viewers. You'll appreciate how well everything worked out when they were doing this movie, especially that setting. Oh, you just felt the cold of the Atlantic. That winter cold, and the windows were freezing up, and the issues with their radar, and it was all those little details in between, which again, I don't know anything about their radar systems and stuff like that, but as I was watching, I could see, okay, I get the idea. Cold affects the radar, and you can't do it at this. The countermeasure that one of the U-boats uses to basically be a decoy, and it just kind of fizzles around, kind of like an Alka-Seltzer pill or whatever, and in the water, and unfortunately, Greyhound and Tom Hanks make the call to launch an ungodly amount of their depth charges over to take this thing out, and it was never even there. I think they lost maybe, I don't want to get this wrong, but probably a good 40 to 50% of their depth charges just on that one pass alone, and
Right.
that put them in deep trouble throughout the rest of the movie.
Right. And I think when you talk about the tension in the movie, one of the things that it does well is that tension continues to build because, and part of it is, it's an under, I think it's one of those things where this underwater decoy technology it's not necessarily well known by anybody who's not participated in combat with a
Right.
German U-boat because, I think one of the other officers even mentions to Kraus, after they drop the
It was the
depth
sound
charges, he's
sound
like,
guy. It was the sound guy.
yeah, as a sound guy, and he it was almost it sounds like it's almost a word of mouth thing, and it's something that if you've seen it,
Right.
but if you haven't seen it, you don't know about it. So it's one of those things where the guy's not even really mad at him because he's like, yeah, this is something that most people don't know about anyway. So you're watching Kraus
Yeah.
learn while he's doing stuff. And even though I think as a first time captain, he's doing a fantastic job, it's just kind of a subtle reminder that
Yes.
there's still some things he doesn't know and has to pick up along the
Yeah,
way.
and that was the beauty of the movie. Hour and a half. It's a very manageable movie. It's not like you're devoting a ton of time to this flick. So you get a lot of great information and just great tension and battles going on between these light warships and the U-boats. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, and then it's bittersweet. I just think towards the end, just talking about it, when they managed to make it past their column, and I thought that was amazing when they finally made it to air cover on England's side, and that all they did was they fired their weapons to show that the aircraft where the U-boat was, and that thing all it had to do was fly right over. It just showed the deadly nature of aircraft support. It's crazy.
They said the Allies won World War II because of air superiority, and it's definitely illustrated right
I
there.
mean,
And I think what I really appreciate about this movie is the ending. In my opinion,
oh
was so
yeah, it
good.
was.
Like it just the fact
It
that
was great.
because you have, like you said, whether you completely understand what's going on or not, there are moments of tension throughout the movie that keep you captured, and the payoff is there. Like
Yeah,
you can see the respect of his crew in their eyes and the way they look at him, like the way he slaved over the decisions he
yes,
made during those 3 days, and yet was still willing to make calls on the spot. And like he told him he gave his kill count to the guy over the radio when they're getting done, and the guy's like, "Wow." He's like,
very
he's like,
impressive.
he's like, and he even asked him basically, he's like, "Have you been doing this for a while?" Something to that effect. He
Yeah,
goes, "This is my first tour." And it really surprised the guy. So they really kind of gave you, even somebody like me who was struggling to understand things as they went on, they really kind of gave you the context for just how good of a job this guy
it
did.
was. And the music score, again, all part of it, and not just the tension
Yep.
scenes, but the very ending music score, which I think they kind of allude to a little bit earlier in the movie, but it's this beautiful melody going on, and it just you just feel proud to be an American
Yep.
and to be proud that there were people fighting for freedoms, and maybe not in all areas like we should have been at home, but at least out there
Right.
doing their job. And when they go by and that other, I don't know if it was the Commodore or one of their the cargo ships, all their men are out and they're yelling Greyhound, and Tom Hanks can see this going down and he starts getting teary eyed, and it was just such a great scene. It was just amazing and such a great, good, feel good moment, and you're just like, wow, and like I said, makes it proud to know that there are people out there doing their jobs like that. It was just amazing. So if you get a chance, definitely get out there. This was an Apple product. Well, excuse me. Actually, I had found out too on a little side note that this was supposed to be a theatrical release, but due to all
Ah,
the COVID things and whatever, Apple
right.
picked it up and currently holds a 7.0 on IMDb with almost 65,000 reviews. If I had to give this my rating for right now, I give this a solid 7.5 easy. I might even linger up to an 8, but I'm going to go with my initial one, 7.5. Adam, what's your thoughts?
I'm gonna hover right at IMDb 7,
There you
and
go.
I think part of that's because it didn't give me I didn't get it quite like you did, but I will say this: I bet the movie's better on a second
Hey,
watch once you know what's going.
and to my defense, or your defense, I guess I should say, an interviewer, I've seen this 3 times now. So, on
Yep.
the third time, I was pretty much well engaged to know what was going down and what. And it's kind of cool when you watch these movies again like that because you really start to pick out the people. I watch Band of Brothers every year around the time of when World War II was kind of kicking up for the U.S. It's such a great series. But, the first time I saw it, you got all these names and people and stuff, although still an immaculate and crazy great series. I was just like, when people were dying, I was just like, I'm not really sure I know who that is. But I tell you, by now, I feel like I know a lot of
Yeah.
these guys, and I've watched some of the commentary from the real people that were part of this group. I mean, they depicted the real men that were part of the 101st Airborne, and I feel so close to these men now, and I thought that's really great. So, well, this is Z-Man Show once again coming at you. Make sure to come out on Wednesdays and check out our content. We'll have Walking Dead coming back in about 45 to 47 days. It's around somewhere in February. We'll be getting some information out on that, and other than that, we will catch you guys at the next review.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.